Welcome back to Trillium Talk, our weekly look at what's been going on at Queen's Park with our team of reporters at the Trillium. Great to have Deputy Editor Snea Dougal back with us to wrap up another week in Ontario politics. Welcome back, Snea. Great as always to have you on the show.
Always happy to be here, Scott.
All right, Snea, let's start with education, specifically the Toronto District School Board, who has come under fire from the province for multiple deficits. Now, the board says there's no fat left to be trimmed, but something's got to give here, Snea. So what's it going to be?
Yeah, so I mean, the board is facing an estimated $58 million deficit for the upcoming school year. So that's what they need to find in savings. Board staff have proposed a number of ways to find these savings, including possibly cutting more than 70 specialized music instructors that teach elementary students. The board also has more than 60 swimming pools in its schools, which are used by students. So they're looking at possibly closing more than half of those if they can't find groups to lease them out and cover some of the costs of running the pools. Other proposals that they're looking at include increasing class sizes and some outdoor education programs. So they haven't made any final decisions yet, but those are some of the proposals that are being put forward. And, the swimming and the music programs especially have been among some of the most controversial and have really, sort of upset some folks in the community.
Now, Education Minister Paul Calandra has criticized the TDSB for administrative costs and the number of employees on the Sunshine List. Now, given that administrative spending accounts for about 2.4% of the board's budget, Snea, is there a realistic way to make meaningful cuts in this area without affecting core services?
Yeah, so I mean, what Jack and I, we worked on this story together, and what we heard from the board and education unions was that, the board there are probably areas where they could find some administration related savings, but they really don't think that's enough. So the chair of the board, he told us that, they are looking for more savings there, but it's not going to keep them from facing these continuous deficits. The minister seems to think otherwise. He had suggested, for example, that the board look at cutting the number of superintendents that they have. So the TDSB, they have about 34 superintendents, and each of them, oversee a number of schools. And the board chair did tell us that they had cut 2 superintendent positions during the last budget. But again, they don't believe this is the area that is really going to help them reach that $58 million in savings that are needed.
Now, beyond the temporary measures, Snea, like cutting programs or increasing class sizes or even getting rid of swimming pools, what structural changes does the TDSB believe are necessary to achieve long-term financial sustainability? How can the province and the board collaborate to address these systemic issues effectively?
So the province has appointed a financial investigator to review the board's finances, and the report is supposed to be wrapped up by the end of this month. So part of the answer to your question could come from that, but according to the board, there are several areas that they believe that the TDSB has been underfunded in by the province. So, for example, the board and other education advocates and other school boards say that the amount of funding for education from the Ford government since they've taken office, while it has gone up, it hasn't kept up with inflation. So in essence, they say that funding has declined. That's a big one. And then the board also wants to see the province end its moratorium on school closures, because it says it's having to spend a ton of money to upkeep schools that are underutilized. The board also wants to see the province cover expenses related to employment. So the board has to pay employees they have to cover, the Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, contributions, and they say that the province isn't matching the increases to the rates for those. The board has asked for a meeting with the education minister to figure out some of this and discuss some of the issues that they're facing. So we'll kind of have to wait and see if that actually happens.
All right, quickly to healthcare and the latest on the measles situation. Public Health Ontario reporting 197 new measles cases in the province in the last week, raising that total number of infections to 1,440 in Ontario since the fall. Now, Health Minister Sylvia Jones says the province's plan is working. The numbers might suggest otherwise, and Liberal health critic Dil Shamji has been very critical of the Ford government. What is he saying?
Yeah, he basically doesn't think the government is doing enough to contain the outbreak. So he's referred to the government's efforts as half-hearted and lukewarm. He's been calling for widespread vaccination campaigns, getting the word out to parents of school-age children about the risks of measles, and also setting up a digital vaccine registry. He also wants to see the government providing regular updates about the measles outbreak and giving public health units more funding as they try to tackle this. And also this week, in response to some comments from the premier the other day, who said that certain communities aren't getting vaccinated because of religious reasons, MPP Shamji accused the premier of using religious communities as scapegoats for the government's inability so far to contain the outbreak.
And we should also point out as well that we're now starting to see some school suspensions. In fact, over 900 just last week in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. So interesting to see where that goes. There's Snay Dougal, Deputy Editor at the Trillium. Thanks, as always, for this, Snay. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks. You too, Scott.
Become a Trillium Insider today and never miss a minute of the action at Queen's Park. Sign up at thetrillium.ca. For all of us at Village Media, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching.